Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So today we are going to be looking at a button that sits on the left-hand side of the control page in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that button is sensitivity. Why is that so important? Why do we need to mess with it at all? And how can it help you become a better pilot? Well, let's find out. Okay, so right off the bat, we are going to start in Gibraltar because it's very scenic. It's just nice to look at. We're also going to be using the Diamond Aircraft DA40NG. The reason why I picked that specific aircraft is, one, it's really nice to look out at the scenes while you're flying around. But most importantly, it does have a center stick. So instead of having a yoke or like on the A320 having the side stick on the left there, it's going to be right dead center, so we can line up this Logitech Extreme 3D Pro right with the screen and make sure that our movements match exactly. So let's set that as our departure. Let's go ahead and make sure we're doing clear skies just so it's nice, the right time of day, and then head back and fly. All right, so what we have done here is just loaded up the aircraft and changed the view. That way you have a better idea of how the actual stick movement translates into the aircraft stick movement and what differences there are. So what we're going to do right away is just show you guys that if I do a small movement to the left here, you can see it start to move right away, and that's good. We want that. But as I get more towards the left here, you'll see it starts to exponentially go to its limit and stop, while I still have quite a bit of movement here. And then we'll bring it back, show the other side. Nice, it tracks along and then kind of does the exponential curve where it moves way further than the actual movement of the stick. And then we have a dead zone here. So let's go ahead and head into the controls and see if we can take care of this. So our main objective here is to go to sensitivity, and you make sure that you're on the device that you want to be changing, which is the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro in this instance. It depends on what you have for your setup. So right off the bat here we can see that I have a profile that's already in use, and that is because I was messing with the sensitivities before, and as soon as you apply them it saves it to a new profile. So I will go back to default and then go in here so you can see exactly what it looks like from the beginning. And there you go. Those are your standard curves, dead zones, everything else as it is when you first plug in a joystick like the Logitech Extreme 3D. And now you can see you have your different axes. So this is your X axis, Y, and then the rotation, that's your rudder or your Z. And also you have your slider for throttle here. So what we're going to be doing is focusing on the X axis, which is your roll right, roll left for your ailerons. That is the one that showed the translation between about here having it move exponentially. And you can see that's because we have a curve applied here. And all you have to do is change the sensitivity down to 0 for your negative axis, for your negative portion of this graph here, and then for the positive do the same, bring it to 0, and now we have a much more linear approach to it. So we'll go back in and we'll save this as profile 2. Like I said, I already had profile 1 because I was messing around with the settings before. So let's go ahead and go back in, apply and save. Go back to the aircraft and we'll see how the difference is here. So now it tracks about the same. It does not have that exponential movement, but then it stops. And that is an issue because right here I still have more movement with my joystick. And that extra movement means that I will hit the limits of my roll with having more movement here, and it's not a direct comparison between the two. So what we want to do is we need to calibrate this. So let's head out. We'll type in device. So we go into here, devices and printers. Get rid of that there. Find our device, which is the Logitech Extreme 3D. Right click on it, go to game controller settings, and then hit properties. And this brings us to a screen where we can see all the different axes moving around, the slider, all the buttons on here. This is a great way to check to see if your stick and everything, all the buttons are working properly. You can see when you press a button, it highlights. Any one of these buttons highlights. The point of view hat also, you can see. Perfect. So what we need to do is calibrate this so it recognizes full right, full left, and all the different axes. So go into settings here, and we're going to calibrate. Perfect. So it says move the handle in complete circles, then press a button on the controller. So we're going to go to all the extremes here. Leave the handle centered, then press a button on the controller. The slider. Z rotation. And finish. Okay, that's a lot better. Alright, so let's head back into the game here. Okay, so now it lines up pretty good. Let's go back into our settings and we'll just change one more thing that I like to always change right away, which is the dead zone. So the dead zone is kind of a flattening of this line here around the center, so that once you move it a little bit around the center, it doesn't actually translate into a movement of the aircraft. So right off the bat, it's set at 2 to bring that up just a little bit and then move it around. So you can see that these small movements right here aren't going to translate into anything with the aircraft until I actually intend on moving it, and then it'll start to register here. And what that does is it takes away some of the sensitivity when you're trying to fly real accurate patterns and everything. So it kind of dulls it down around the center. And we can do that with the pitch axis as well. Bring that to 0, bring the dead zone up again, and then once we go in, apply this, we should be able to see that it doesn't do anything once I'm moving around. So just resting my hand on here, you know, it naturally moves around a little bit while you're flying. It's not going to translate into any big movements with the aircraft until you intend on moving it. Now, some of the other settings that we have here are we won't mess with the other ones right now, but you would apply this to the rudder axis as well. For right now, we're going to be focusing on reactivity, what this does. Now, all this means is that it's giving you an equal response to whatever you input. So if I roll right, it's going to roll right the same amount at the same time. So if you decrease this, let's bring it all the way down to 3, right? So now when I do a quick roll, it's not going to quick roll. It's going to take its time. See how it kind of moves around there? It slows it down as you're going. And that's one way to just kind of dull your movements around the axes here. You can get a very clear picture if you do the throttle slider and do a quick 100%. You see how it kind of jumps around as it's going. There you go. Personally, I have never used this. I always leave it at 100% for everything. If you do know a reason why you would have to have this set to anything other than 100, go ahead and leave that in the comments. That way you can explain it to me. Maybe I will start using it. So for the extremity dead zone, that is the same as the dead zone for the center here, but it is at the extremes of the axis. So if you were to increase this, your dead zone now applies to the end of your stick movement. So you can see we get about halfway here, and that's going to be it. There isn't going to be any other movement past that point. This is another one of those that I don't really mess with. I always leave it at 0. That way we have our full movement all the way through. So if you guys know of a reason why you would be using this, I can't see a reason with this exact setup, but if you do know a reason, go ahead and leave that in the comments. That way you can enlighten me and the rest of the people watching this video. There you go. So on the rudder axis, I like to have, like I said, the dead zone, so that I don't actually so I don't accidentally hit rudder input while I'm doing other maneuvers. And when I do want to use the rudder, I want it to be very gradual, especially when I'm compensating for the rotation of the prop and everything during takeoffs. I like to have it very, very dull in the beginning. And then if I do need to have extreme maneuvers, then you'll have that exponential curve at the end. And the throttle we'll just leave as is. So this will work for me here. Let's apply and save and head back, and then I will take off and we'll see how it feels. This setup right here might not actually be that great when you're flying around. Again, it's all based off of how you like to fly, and I hope that just highlighting these different settings can allow you to get that perfect setup so everything is a lot smoother. So what I'll do now is I will actually take off here and see how the experience is. I do not have my VR set up or my head tracker, so this will be a little rough. Okay, so what that showed right there was a prime example of incorrect sensitivities. My pitch was way too sensitive. So as I'm moving around, even a little bit of an input was causing me to jump around quite a bit. So all we have to do to fix that, like I mentioned, is dumb it down with the sensitivity. So we'll head back in here. That is my pitch axis, the Y axis there. So let's go ahead and lower that down a little bit here. Oh, sorry, that's not what I want. I want the other way. There we go. Okay, so now you have a relatively large amount of input on the actual stick here, which will translate to a smaller movement in the aircraft. And what that's going to do is it's going to mean that it's going to take more input to get more, instead of a linear approach. So that should help when we are taking off here, and when we're flying around and doing pitch movements, it should help smooth it out a little bit. Okay, so now that we've adjusted that, let's go ahead and take off again. That way you can see how much better the pitch input actually is. I do not have the trim set up on here, so that definitely affects things. It's always nice to trim your aircraft out. That way you're not fighting it while you're trying to make your pitch adjustments. Okay, that's much better. So you can make nice gradual movements now instead of it jerking around like it was before. And that is the whole point of setting your sensitivities. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope that I shed some light on the sensitivity button and kind of cleared some things up there for you. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. I will do my best to get to those. And if you like the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.